Hi, everyone. This is Isa Tees.
And this is Raphael, and welcome back to Relationships Done Different. Today's show is all about long distance relationships. Can they work? And am I crazy to even consider one? This topic came up because we had a question from one of our listeners a few weeks back, and we decided it was so important and such a so many people face these issues that we decided it was a great topic to discuss. So, Isa Tees?
First of all, if you're here and you don't have a long distance relationship or you're not even thinking of one, stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of very important information for you about relationships in general, and you can apply them in your life right this minute. So it's an interesting subject from my viewpoint, long distance relationships, because in the past I've had when I used to date a long time ago, there would be this GU, this term GU, geographically undesirable. If somebody lived too far, like out of the comfort zone, then we would label them GU, or they might label me or somebody else GU because they were geographically undesirable. And what that meant was it was going to take too long to get to them, or driving or whatever. And so it was already considered that it wasn't a good idea. Well, in our days now, things are so very different because we have people in our yard, at least on our computer in our yard, all the time. We have, let me give you an example. My sister has a really great friend in New Zealand, and they met like 6 years ago online. And they've become really, really good friends. And in fact, he has come to visit many times since then. He didn't know her. She didn't know him. She was at the time married, had a child. Since then, her husband has died. But he would come over over here to the U.S. as a friend because they built such an amazing relationship online. They're both gamers. So they were gaming, and so they would talk for sometimes hours every night, and they just became really close friends. And he'd never been to the U.S., so he flew over here, and his father looked up Google Maps and all of that to find out where he was really going, and because he's a young guy. And so the bottom line is this kind of thing happens all the time. And of course, we have dating apps. And most of the time on the dating apps, it will give you a geographically significant or specific area that you are looking for people. Some people don't put a definition to area because they know that the heart of their heart might be somewhere else, farther away. So is it possible to have a long-distance relationship? Absolutely, but let's define that a little bit more. So do you want to say anything about the first part of what I said before I just go, take over?
No, go for it.
Okay.
This is...
You anxious to hear what I'm going to say?
I am, because I'm learning as we speak, as you speak.
I'm anxious to see what I'm going to say, too. So...
This is a very in-the-moment show.
It always is. There's, it's like you don't have notes. He says, okay, this is what we're going to talk about, and then we talk about it. Because that's the spontaneity of being authentic. At any rate, so we have the ability to connect with people in ways that we have never connected with them before because of the way our world is set up. And if you've ever been on a dating app and you find that the geographics are specific or non-specific, you can choose whatever it is that you would like. And as I said, some people say, I don't really care where they live. I just want to meet the person that is, quote unquote, my person. Well, there's some pros and cons, of course, to all of these different kinds of things. But let's just start with the core. The core is to be in any successful or joyful or connected kind of relationship, we know, because you've been listening to me more than this time, I'm sure, that relationships succeed or change, because I don't really feel like any relationship doesn't work. It's just a matter of whether they're aligned enough or not. So we know that it starts from within you. You are the one who is the creator of this amazing experience, and the person that you draw towards you is your self-development coach. What does that mean? It means that they're going to be in front of you to push all the buttons they possibly can, and not just the buttons that are trigger buttons, but the awesome buttons too. It might be the passion. It might be the communication. It might just be the heart to heart that you share that is beyond words. There's all kinds of quote unquote buttons that we all have, and most relationships will touch some of all of them. And the reason that I say it's a self-development course is because we will frequently see things in our relationship that we don't want to admit we have anything to do with. So it's first, of course, important that you know yourself. So the distance thing comes up as a matter of, it's really about your belief system. If you have a belief that you can't be with somebody, or you don't want to be with someone that's not within driving distance, or for some, walking distance, and for others, it might be flying distance, but not too far away. And for other people, they don't really care. So what's true for you? Just think about that for a moment. Regardless of what your circumstances are right now, think about what would you do if you met someone, let's say you're not in a relationship right now, that you met someone that, oh my gosh, this is so my dream come true, but they live on the other side of the world. What would happen? How would you deal with that? Kind of think about that for a minute, because it's an important thing to remember, because distance is only one factor in relationships that work or do not turn out the way that you would like them to be. Because one of the more important keys right off the bat is your value system. What are your values? What do you really relish as important? What about honesty? What about impeccability? What about communication? What about all the other things that really establish a core relationship being successful or not successful, or feeling good or not feeling good? It doesn't matter where somebody lives. That part is really critical to have in order or in alignment. And you can also look at what are your life goals. If someone wants to go out there and be president of the United States, but you really want to live on a farm in the country and spin your own wool, probably not going to be a really good match.
A little radical there, don't you think?
Well, kind of, but I actually know somebody who wants to be president of the United States, and I know that there was a time in my life that I lived on the farm, and I had my Angora goats, and I would take their hair and I would spin it, and I would, I made a bedspread, one time. So I do know that these two things seem a little radical, but I'm doing this for emphasis rather than anything else. Remember that this work is also about know thyself. So every time we speak here, we really want you to be able to be looking inside yourself and see what fits for you and what doesn't fit for you, and what doesn't fit, throw it away or come back later because it might fit for you later. But the bottom line is, when you know yourself, when you have 100% self-awareness, then your life is going to be completely different, because you will make choices that will be relative to what's true in your heart. Guess what? People don't make choices about what's true in their heart. People make choices because they are afraid if they pick one thing, it won't turn out as good as they want it to be, or they make another one because somebody will be mad at them, or they make another one because they're afraid of being alone. So most people are not truly authentic because of the fear of loss. That's usually one of the first things. So let's get back to,
Before you do that,
Yeah.
can I just wanted to
Sure.
interject something here. It came to me while you were speaking that if one picks a long distance, a person to have a long distance relationship with, by definition, that person, now you tell me if you agree with this, is unavailable, like you were talking about before, but so that the person who picks that person or who chooses to have the long distance relationship is picking someone that they know will be much more difficult to have a relationship with, or a relationship that will stick or be fulfilling, because they're afraid of getting into a committed or a relationship that will require them to be very honest.
so the answer to that is no, as not always true. It absolutely is not always true.
But it does happen, I'm guessing, no?
Well, of course, everything happens, but it is not really, and literally everything does happen. It is not literally what happens maybe all of the time. Sometimes, absolutely. And one of the ways you know that is by looking at the history and see if you're the kind of person that picks married partners, or people to have affairs with, or you choose to be a mistress, or you choose to be a, what do they call them, sugar daddy for people, so you can have them around, but you're married, and that's the kind of thing that you would like. You pick unavailable people. And I know quite a few women who have picked men that are married because, yes, they are afraid of commitment. And this puts them in a place where they can always stay at arm's length, and it also can set you up, not always, but sometimes, to be a victim. On the other hand, when we're talking about long distance, I look at that differently. So what I'm suggesting here is that long distance, yes, it can work, and you want to do some real introspection to find out, how aligned are you really? And what is the possibility that you could ever live in the same vicinity, or the same house, or the same state, or the same town, or the same street? It really, there's a lot to look at with this. So if there is something that could possibly happen down the road, then a long distance relationship is merely doing the groundwork to get to a place where you know that ultimately you would be and would like to be together. So you can do a lot of I was going to say premarital, or pre-relationship. It's not really pre-relationship, but you can do a lot of things and learn a lot about each other, especially when you're on Zoom together, or Skype, and you talk on the phone, or you text, or you spend time with each other periodically. So let's say, to make this a little easier, let's say that you live in California and they live in New Jersey. Well, that is a reasonable amount of distance between the two. It doesn't mean you can't get on a plane and visit each other every whatever period of time, once a month, once every quarter, once whatever. And you get to experiment, if you will, about how the relationship does when you stay together for a couple days, and then a week, and then more and more, and you find out. Because I'll tell you, and I'll bet most of you know this, when you live with someone, it is so not the same as dating them or spending a fun weekend with him. You get down to the nitty-gritty, and pretty soon the makeup comes off. He's throwing his jock strap around, or whatever it is that people may do. I know Raphael's shaking his head, going, "What the heck?"
We're getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Well, we're just getting real here, because the truth is that people do stuff. People become different. They become their habits when they're living together, and they don't feel like they have to put on their Sunday shoes, so to speak. They don't have to put on their best face. They frequently will acquire this sense of taking someone for granted, or whatever. That's another whole subject matter. But when we're talking about developing a relationship, you really want to be in a place where you are looking at what's core and not just what blows your skirt up at that particular moment. So long distance depends on where your core values are. It depends on what it is that you are specifically looking for in a relationship. Some people, surprisingly, they really don't want to be in a live-in relationship or a marriage relationship. They like their freedom. And so many times they are so comfortable with being their own person, and they get to visit or spend time with or whatever with another person, that really works for them because they don't want to be what their mind may say is locked in. They don't want to have to report to somebody. They don't want to have to be in a way that their partner thinks that they ought to be or whatever. So they get their freedom, but they can also be with somebody to spend time with and perhaps spend, maybe it's just about sex. It just really depends on the two people. So the core thing is, if you're thinking about a long distance relationship or any relationship for that matter, get really clear. What do you want?
What's your payoff for being in that relationship?
What are you looking for? So you write down, ideally, what is it that you want? Do you want to live with someone? Do you want to be able to have availability to spend time frequently together? Are you the kind of person that literally wants to spend 24/7 with a person? I pretty much am that kind of person. Most all of my relationships after somewhere along the line were relationships that that I worked with or was around on a very, very close to 24/7 experience. Raphael and are like that pretty much now. And yet I have been in relationships where he, quote unquote, went to work, but that was only for part of the relationship. So I'm one of those kind of girls. I like being with someone pretty much all the time, and I like getting along that way. It's not mandatory, but it's kind of works for me. And some people, it's like, no way. I want that guy out of the house and I want to do my thing, or I want to go to my work. I want my own independence. I want my own individuality. Well, if you have that at your core, a long distance relationship might be like really awesome for you because you get what you get when you get it, and you get to be with you whenever you want. And so things can work out really well. I will also say that the majority of people prefer to be with somebody close up and cozy, meaning that they want to live in the home or at least nearby somebody so they can have a more intimate relationship mentally, emotionally, and physically. And you can have some of that long distance, but it's not the same. I mean, there's definitely not the same.
In your experience, are long distance relationships generally monogamous?
Depends on the person, and that has to be agreed upon.
You speak like a lawyer, you know?
Well,
being a lawyer, I know.
It's really important for you. We're back to values. What's important to you? Is monogamy important to you? If monogamy is important to you, then you better get really clear with this person, whether they be in your town or whether they're in another state or another country, because if you are not on the same page with that, and you don't really trust that person, then that is not going to be a really important thing, or rather, I should say, it will be a very important thing for you to know about. And you need to be on the same page with that. See, any relationship can really work, no matter where it is, if you're both on the same page with your values, your beliefs, where you want to go, and what your long-term plan is, if you even have one. Does that make sense?
It does. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that people can say, okay, we'll be monogamous, but then when they're alone and they have that autonomy or that independence, will they stick to that? Or how important is it? And I guess the question is getting down to, which is something that one of our listeners brought up about the whole idea of sex in a long distance relationship and how that all fits in.
Well, again, everyone is so different. So one of the things that some people do, and just know, we should probably put a warning at the front of this podcast about, it's just things are wide open. But I mean, some people spend time having phone sex, even though they live far apart. So they'll have phone sex together. They might even do that on Skype or on Zoom or whatever. Some people, it might be phone sex. Other people just take care of themselves and they save the intimacy with each other. Other people will say, I actually coached somebody, and that they lived in different countries and they both agreed that they would just be whatever they were and wherever they were. And when they came together, they would be together in I guess you could call it monogamous, because they'd be monogamous when they were together, but when they weren't together, they weren't. So it really, really depends. And if you are with someone that you make an agreement about something and you don't trust that, get out of the relationship and come and get some coaching. Because the insecurity that you have there is creating somebody who is not necessarily going to live up to your ideals or your expectations. And it's really important to pull someone towards you that is going to be aligned to support you in being as happy and playful as you can. On the other hand, somebody can come to you because they're going to help you see where your sensitivities are or where your issues are, if you will, and you can utilize that relationship to expand and grow.
Based on your years of experience, especially in coaching the people in long distance relationships, do you find they're happier or not as happy as they would or could otherwise be in a close proximity relationship?
I would say that by nature, humans are very communal. People want to live together. They want community together. They really want to be with each other with certain levels of variance to that. So what that means is that I would say that long-distance relationships have a higher likelihood of not turning out to be long-term unless there is a plan where they're going to get together than relationships that are close up and personal. Although, as I'm saying that, I'm kind of smiling to myself because I'm thinking, okay, what's our divorce rate? Like 60% or even more than that? Then that's, obviously being close to each other that could be the hindrance. Maybe long distance is something to consider, because if you're not with them a lot, like you don't have a lot to fight about.
Probably can't do any worse than the 60%, right?
It's really hard to say, but that's a real possibility. So, but I do know that people in general really want to be with each other. We want the tactile experience. We want the nurturing that comes with. We want someone when we're having a bad day to hold us or to talk to us. We want someone to have the ability to be able to bounce things off of and to share what's in your heart or what you're afraid of or whatever. And it's not that you can't do that over the phone or over the internet. It's that somehow, sometimes it doesn't feel the same because they can't reach over and hold you and hug you. And you can't look at each other in the eyes the same way exactly that you can when you're in person. So again, it's going to depend what your personal needs are. Some people don't want people to be that close to them. Some people really prefer to keep everyone at arm's length, and they're going to be a lot more successful in a long-distance relationships than somebody who isn't.
And then they can control their lives that way.
That's right. They can have it be the way that they want it to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of what is it that's true for you. What is being authentic in your heart of hearts really about? What does it mean for you?
So here's another thought that just popped into my head. Do you think it's a red flag if a couple starts off a long distance relationship on a very open ended basis? I mean, I can understand if someone gets a job and has going to work in another city for a year or two, and the plan is to reunite. It's a finite separation period. But if there is no plan, do you think that's a red flag?
Red flag, probably. And if there isn't a plan, the two people better be very aligned, because if one person is I want to be with that person in person, I want to be within arm's reach of them, I want to be able to touch them, and the other person is fine with traveling around. There's a lot of people that travel a lot in their relationships, and sometimes it works out really great. Other times that quote unquote temptation thing, well, I'm lonely, I haven't been home, I haven't had sex, I haven't had whatever it may be. And when that occurs, then suddenly there's justification to step out of the monogamy role. And if that's okay with both of you, then that's great. If it's not okay with you, then something different needs to happen.
Okay, so we've gone through a bunch of different scenarios. I personally, since I enjoy having the close tactile approach and being with someone that I love, that I just really find it hard to relate. So I want to ask you this question. You've talked about how it's really important to be aware and to be really clear about what your intention is and why you want or don't want to be in that relationship. How does one do that? Because because it seems to me there's a lot of programs and there's a lot of underlying stuff that's lying literally, pardon the pun, under the covers that will cloud the decision and the reasons for making that kind of decision.
There frequently are a lot of underlying things within each person that are having them create a long distance relationship. What's important is to look at yourself, and the way you look at yourself is sometimes this is difficult to do on your own, quite honestly, because it's very hard to see what we can't see, or the term we use a lot is it's hard to know what you don't know. That's why you have coaches or you have people that can help you really become more aware and more self-introspective, so you can get underneath the covers, as you said, to know yourself well enough to know what your heart wants, not what your fear wants, because your fear may say, oh, being with somebody who travels a lot is really great because then I'll have more alone time. And underneath that is, and then I don't have to be as responsible, or I don't have to be with somebody all the time, or I don't have to be afraid of them glomming onto me, or whatever the fear is. And for other people, it would be, gosh, I want somebody to be here all the time, and they can have the same issues. I want to know where he is all the time. I want to be sure he's not cheating or she's not cheating. I want to have, my fingertips on everything. So they both are really saying the same thing, and it all boils down to fear. So the real question to ask yourself is, what fear might I have in regard to relationships? So you can ask yourself that question, and that would be a really good start. And if you're really not clear about that, or you can't see that, then I suggest that you get some support so you know yourself better, so you can make decisions that are true in your heart rather than in your mind. Because decisions that are made just from your head, or just from sometimes your intuition, they need to be looked at because it's a balance between the two. Does it, let's just say that you're a single mother with 3 children and you meet somebody that you're head over heels with and they happen to be in, 3,000 miles away. Is it realistic for you to move there? Is it realistic for them to move to you? And when might that happen, and what plan of action do you have that occur? These are things that you need to talk about. Maybe not on the first interaction, but pretty darn quick, because you might as well know up front. It is so unfun to fall in love with somebody and find out that there's not a chance in wherever that they're going to move and be with you, and or vice versa. If you're the single mom's got 3 kids and your divorce papers and your visitation rights with the partner, with the other parent, is that you're not allowed to leave the state, have a news bulletin. You better make sure that person's willing to move, or you have a long-distance relationship that will probably not last, because most parents want their kids to have a reliable, consistent parent, 2 parents around. And although that's certainly not so common anymore, it is important for you to be clear for yourself what it is that you want, and what do you want for your children. What do you think is best for your kids?
Oh, that's a whole nother gig
Yeah.
there, because we haven't even talked about the whole kids thing. But we're running out of time in this session. Any one last parting thought you could help us with here, because this is complex.
It is complex, and really the answer is not an answer that is a blatant yes or no. It boils down to the most important question is, do you know yourself well enough to know what your underlying belief systems, programs, ideas are as to why you're in a long-distance relationship? Or why do you want to be in a long-distance relationship? And it may be, as I said, that you just happenstance, seemingly, there are no coincidence or accidents, so there's really no such word as happenstance, but let's just say that you meet somebody who's far away and you do have a very, very close connection. Then pretty much right off the bat, you need to get clear about whether this is a decision that can be made to where you can both be in alignment with what your end goal is. But you said something about having a plan or having an end goal. How many people that get married do you think have a plan of action for their relationship?
Plan of action or an end goal?
Either, both. Do they have a whatever? I mean, young people that get married these days, they might, or maybe even in the old days, so to speak, they might say, okay, because the routine is, I'm with somebody that I really love. I'm going to have 2.5 children. I'm going to live in the house. I'm going to get he's going to get a job and take care of me, or we're going to get jobs to eat. We're both going to get jobs. And then we get to a bigger house and we make more money and we put our kids through school and we do all of this. And that is the underlying supposed to be plan. But is that the plan that works for you? These days, not so much. We've got many very independent women that have no desire to be with men because they're self-reliant. They don't really give a flying phooey whether they have somebody in their life or not.
And then when one of the partners wants to break away from that traditional sheeple type plan, where everything was kind of laid out for them, or their parents told them how they had to be, and when they want to go out and do something, take another job in another area, take more responsibility, do whatever, that will generally cause the relationship to end if that's not clear.
Right. Which brings us back to two key important things. One is know thyself, and know that what you know right now might change tomorrow, or next week, or next year, which means that you always want to maintain a certain level of flexibility and malleability in yourself, in your communication, and in your life. And secondly, that you must have open, clear communication that never wavers from the impeccable you to the highest level that you know it.
Cool. Okay, before we break here, I'm going to go out on the limb here and give everybody, all people in a relationship, homework. And we'd like you to send it to us if you're brave enough to do that. And that homework is to sit down with your partner, your spouse, whatever, and have that discussion and come up with the 5 most wanted, most important goals or aspects of your relationship that you want to happen, and see if you're in alignment with that.
So I think that you need to be more specific with that to help people know, because I'm not sure what that means. Are you talking about long-term goals? Are you talking about I want her to have more sex with me? That's my plan. That's my goal. Try to
I,
be a little more specific.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about I want more sex kind of thing. That was not my thought. My thought is that we get to you opened up a whole line of thinking for me when you said that. People get into it, and it's a very important question. People get together, they're in lust, they're having all these hormones and emotions, and it's great. But what's the long-term purpose? And the purpose isn't the right word. What's the long-term intention for what they want to get and participate with and share with that partner? And again, it's not just a sexual thing. It's what are your, I guess it's really an alignment of your values, and are your long-term values in alignment, or your long-term desires as to where you want to go with your life.
Well, it's an interesting homework assignment, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get some new coaching clients when people start to look at that, because most people don't want to look at that. They just live from moment to moment, day to day, and then one day they reach a place where I'm not happy in this relationship and I'm leaving, because they did not really do the kinds of things that we're speaking about here. They really didn't know in their heart or in their core what it is that they really wanted. And then they find themselves very unhappy. And this is very, very common.
So it's like they're on a rudderless ship, kind of like on a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean, just bobbing along. And someone is going to change. One of the people in the relationship are going to change. And that's where the relationship gets into trouble. So that was huge, actually. For me, that's a really important thing for creating the unity and the moving forward plan in a relationship. So thanks for that. That's great.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Okay, everyone, we're back. And we have a question today from Benjamin from Southern California. And he said, a week or two ago, you talked about mirroring in relationships. What if I don't see in me that which I see in others?
Well, Benjamin, when you don't see in yourself what it is that you see in others, it is usually because the awareness about that is just not able to be seen, because the self-awareness piece is not there, or perhaps you have identified what you see in them as something different than the way it's expressing through you. So what that means is that there may be something that's going on inside of you that another person is demonstrating, but it isn't coming back exactly the same way. So let's take, I know somebody who has been in a relationship, and she feels like she's really been victimized, for lack of a better term. This person changes his mind all the time, and he has not been consistent, and she feels like she has no control. And so as a result, she kind of feels like a victim, and she feels really lost about that. Well, he's not able to see anything inside of himself for his part in that. Her, well, since she has had some coaching, she's able to see the lack of clarity, the lack of commitment that she has had. And so she's got somebody who is really, really inconsistent with her. He's looking at it like, well, she is pushing me away and she's doing this. And he doesn't see it as judgment. He doesn't see that when he's judgmental about her, that he is pushing her away. And then she pushes him away. So it goes back and forth. So here's the bottom line. When you notice that you're having a judgment about someone, then look inside yourself and see if there's anything that's even remotely related to what they're doing. And don't just look at it literally, like, well, I never don't call for 2 days or something like that. It's not that. But is there ever a time when you kind of back up and back out? In other words, where you don't communicate openly and clearly for a couple of days? Is there a time when you are emotionally distant, even when you're with somebody in the same room? Because these kinds of things are very similar. So if let's say she doesn't call you for 2 days and she was the one who was supposed to, and you don't see how you fit to that because you always call when you say you're going to. But the question, an example would be, do you always stay 100% present? Do you go away in a different kind of way than not making the phone call? There's always something that the other person is going to be showing you. And here's the real important little caveat here. It's not always with that person. It's not always in that exact moment. This may be something that you have done or in the past with some other person at some other time, or it may be something that's coming up for you, preview of coming attractions, and how you deal with it is going to be the most important thing. The more judgmental and the more victimized you feel, and the more you project your own discomfort on the other person, will enhance the degree of discomfort that you will experience somewhere along the line. Because remember that what goes out has to come back. Energy never leaves its source. So it's like a boomerang. You can send it out there, but it will flip a U and it'll be back right around your neck sooner than you even realize it. So it's really important to recognize that if you can't see it right away, ask somebody to help you, or do a lot of introspective work, or ask internally to see what it is that this person is showing you in that particular moment that would help you be more clear about why you keep creating relationships that keep showing you the same darn thing. Because if you're pretty honest with yourself, you'll probably look back and notice some similarities in past relationships. Have you guys ever noticed that? Have you noticed that the person you're with now that does something that's very irritating, and yet maybe if you look a little closer, the person you were with before that had something, kind of like similar to that, and the person before that kind of ran the same kind of number? Well, there's something in you that's being tapped on to give you an opportunity to clean it up. So I invite you to take a look inside. And if you really still can't find it, then let me know and we'll do some work together.
And I would just like to say, Benjamin, the fact that you say, well, I don't see it in me, and that's totally fine. I would say that there is very likely a resistance in you to wanting to see it that most likely is subconscious. It's not, you consciously say, okay, I want to get to the bottom of this, but there's a resistance. There's a line in the sand that might be something that you're just unwilling. I just can't go there kind of thing. That has to be looked at. So again, just consider that, ask the question, and wait for a great answer.
Well, and that's a really good point because it's not, you're using the word unwilling, and that might feel a little threatening to someone because somebody can intellectually say, yo, I am really willing to know that, but there's a deep underlying core principle of, if you really know who I am, you won't love me, or if I expose that, I am going to be opening myself up to attack, make wrong, or whatever the case may be, which basically means I won't feel safe. So that means that it's very important for you to recognize that you, on some level, on a deeper subconscious level, may not be willing, but even though your conscious mind wants it, that there is a disparity between the two, and that disparity is actually protecting you from seeing it, because the part of the mind that knows that if you see that and if you actually admit that, that it could be threatened. So it's protecting you from the fear of what it is that may be going on underneath that. So it's still something that you can ask yourself, but don't beat yourself up and say that you're not willing. You might not be willing, but there is another side to that willingness piece.
And what I meant was that unwillingness is really, it's unconscious. It's not something that you're consciously or knowingly doing. It's just that resistance that's there. So I agree with that totally.
Awesome.
Okay, well, thank you for that question, Benjamin. That was awesome. Isatis, we're going to go to the part of the show where Isatis asks her most important question of the day.
Okay, question for the day. What would it take for me to know what I really want? What would it take for me to know what I really want? And the relevance of that question is based on what we spoke about today, which is when you know yourself, when you know what you want, then you will make decisions more readily. Do you want a long-term relationship? And if you do, what are the factors that will make it work or not work for you? And this question is very powerful because it can be used in so many different circumstances, like when you're trying to make a decision between two different things, regardless of what that is. If you just ask yourself rhetorically, not expecting to sit down and quote unquote figure out an answer, but just say, what would it take for me to know what I really want? What happens is it allows all the walls and barriers to slip away and the truth of what it is that's going on with you to emerge, so you have tremendous clarity.
Cool. Thank you. And I'm just going to go back to my homework question, and I got some more clarity about how to ask that question more precisely. And how about you sit down with your partner and ask these two questions? Where do we want to be as a couple in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? And looking at the bigger picture about your values, your purpose, what really will give you greater connection and greater fulfillment, both with your partner and individually.
That's great. That is a lot more clear.
I understand it could be a little unclear, and that was just something that's coming through for me, and I think that's something we should do.
Okay.
We might even do what we ask you to do.
Oh
my God, what
you
a
mean
thought.
we might practice what we preach, so to speak?
Oh, well, okay, that's another story. Okay, you guys, it's really great to be with you. We will see you next week.
I will look forward to it, and I'm counting the moments until we connect again.
Oh, sorry. Send us your questions. We really want to hear from you. If there's any particular topics you'd like to hear from us or hear us talk about, please let us know. We're here to be in service, and we just love chatting.
Yes, we do. So be sure to comment below, email us, do whatever it is that you would like to do, but most of all, have fun, because we love being in your life.
And tell your friends and your family.
Oh, yeah,
listen.
tell your friends. Tell your friends. Send this link to everybody on your contact list.
We have a couple of friends who are in a carpool, And they tell me they've gotten their whole carpool to listen to, they make them listen to our podcast. And they're great, 30, 40-minute shows. I think it'd be a great thing. So just a thought, just a suggestion.
That's a great idea.
Okay, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Feel a hug.